Picture it. You're in the middle of a project. Timelines are tight, meetings are steady, and things seem to be moving forward. And then, bam, a stakeholder throws up an objection that catches everyone off guard. It's not exactly a deal breaker, not yet, but it slows things down, creates tension, and if left unchecked, can quietly stall momentum. John Prichard has seen that same moment more times than he can count. But where others see conflict, John sees an opportunity to pause, dig deeper, and navigate disagreements with clarity and empathy. A while back, he shared a 5-step approach to non-confrontational mediation designed specifically for situations like this. It's practical, people-centered, and built for the real-world messiness of project work. Today, we're revisiting that framework. John's here to break it down and share the insight he's gained from guiding teams through friction without losing focus. This is Frontline Insights, the podcast where we explore the real-world intricacies of business transformation. I'm your host, Kenneth Folk. Let's jump in. Mr. John Prichard, aka JP. I can call you JP, right?
Absolutely.
Well, welcome to the podcast, JP. We're so excited to have you.
I am excited to be here and record this.
Nice. So you have worked across a lot of programs. What kinds of everyday disagreements or misalignments tend to show up most often?
Oh gosh, I think most often disagreements over the length of the project are going to be about responsibilities, the right solution to a problem, who does what and when, what tool to use. Every week is full of some item that you have to resolve to keep things running smoothly.
So JP, I'd love to dig into something that you touched on. You mentioned those small disagreements that can pop up early on. Can you walk us through how, if no one steps in, those little things can actually start to snowball into real blockers for the project?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, a recent one right now is who does something or who the point of contact is for a certain department or technology or solution. A lot of the times when you don't get a crisp handoff or you have a task that nobody really wants to do, people like to live in ambiguity, right? And that will be an ambiguous task right up until it's due if you don't jump in and figure that out right away so that it can be successful.
Yeah. So just to make sure I've got the gist of your approach that you mentioned in the article, you laid out a 5-step method for handling disagreements on projects in a way that's really calm and constructive. So it starts with you as the project lead, kind of stepping back and pleading ignorance, so to speak. Not in a passive way, but kind of as a way to open up the dialogue and show genuine curiosity. And then from there, it's about digging into the facts, getting really specific about what's actually causing the friction. And then you work with the stakeholders to frame a clear problem statement, something everybody can agree on. And then I think after that, you ask them to weigh in with potential solutions, really putting the ownership back on them in a collaborative way. And then your final step was about bringing it all back together, reviewing the options and either landing on a path forward or escalating if needed. Did I get that right? Anything you'd add or emphasize differently?
Gosh, you could talk about this all day, but I think the really important part is being the first one to step back and clarify the exact problem. And sometimes it means pleading ignorance, and sometimes it means being ready to be wrong. But I think from starting from that standpoint and not jumping right into solutioning until everyone's aligned on what the problem is, I think that opens a door to really get down to the root issue and also make people feel comfortable contributing their expertise.
Give me an example of what that sounds like.
Sure. Sometimes I'll say, you're the expert here, so walk me through the detail of this issue. And other times, if there is already a disagreement about something when I come here, I start by saying, okay, well, do we agree on what needs to be done at least, or is that in disagreement too? So again, it involves stepping back to get back to the very beginning of an issue, right? You can't start in the middle and be sure that you solve the problem.
JP has this way of digging past surface level stuff to find the real issue, and not in a gotcha way, but in a way that actually helps people to move forward. What he shares next about unmasking the issue is super practical and honestly kind of a shift in mindset. Right. It's not necessarily about forcing agreement, it's more about creating clarity. And this is what sets the stage for what you call unmasking the issue.
Yeah. Unmasking the issue is about not just qualifying what type of issue it is, but making sure that you're solving the right problem. When you solve the wrong problem, you can walk away with something that feels like you got to the end, but
Uh-huh.
a lot of the times there's an underlying disagreement, or you walk away without even solving the underlying problem. So without unmasking the true issue, you run the risk of a false sense of confidence that
Right.
will definitely bite you later.
Oh, I bet. So, JP, something that you said that really stuck with me is that most of the so called bad actors on a project aren't actually trying to sabotage anything. They're just not aligned. Or maybe they're not being totally upfront about their real priorities, right? And I love that your approach isn't about calling them out, but more about unmasking what's really going on underneath. So, can you talk a little bit about that? How do you spot that kind of misalignment and what it looks like to handle it constructively?
Sure. I mean, most people who just don't want to do something aren't usually going to come out and say, I don't want to do something because I'd rather not. Right. Um, Sometimes they will, and that's refreshing. But most of the time, there are a flurry of plausible issues that are brought up that have nothing to do with what's actually going on. Right. Nobody thinks of themselves as a bad actor. No one's the villain in their script. So unmasking
Mm-hmm.
the issue is, you're not punishing them for having an opinion. You're trying to surface the reality. And so by collecting the facts about the matter, I mean, that'll get you close, but that doesn't always give you everything. So you really need to invite people to reveal the deeper reason that they're holding back. If somebody doesn't want to
Yeah.
do something, it's not a moral judgment. Maybe they think that it's going to be too much work for them, or it's going to affect their
Hmm.
performance review. Maybe they think it properly is with somebody else's department. And what's crucial is you don't ask them to justify what they want, right? You're asking them to share
Okay.
their concerns. Uh, and you might have to come back and ask them to justify depending on what their concerns are. But you're never gonna get their true answer if you come at them like a ton of bricks.
Got it. That makes sense. Anything else you wanted to add to that?
Motivations are always valid and they deserve to be acknowledged. And those are also part of the facts. So facts just aren't a business problem. Sometimes they're motivation, alignment, and concerns. And they're risks as well as facts, but they deserve to be acknowledged and taken down.
Absolutely. I think that's one part of it that often gets skipped. So I love that you mentioned that motivations are also valid and part of the quote unquote facts, right? Everyone has that right to have their opinions and have their motivations validated. So, how do you stay professional when the facts aren't clean and emotions are all over the place? Because I know sometimes these projects get really emotional.
It can. I mean, it's people's livelihoods. We're in there for, 6 months, a year, 2 years, and that's their career. So acknowledging where people are when they have a disagreement is really
Mm-hmm.
important. And
Mm-hmm.
then you've been getting the facts to get enough clarity to decide, who's going to get their way or escalate something if something isn't happening.
Mm-hmm. I feel like you're going to say something about governance model now.
Yeah, the governance model is key. So the purpose of mediating and gathering these facts is that either people are going to have to agree or someone's going to have to decide. And that's why having a good governance model in place is if someone's going to pick a winner and a loser, somebody doesn't want to do it or they're worried about something and it still has to be that way. Ultimately, that's not you as a consultant. It's going to convince them. It has to go in through their project governance and become part of their job. So you always have to be
Got it.
ready to take it there.
Got it. Thank you. So let's talk about another thing that you mentioned that I think a lot of folks will relate to. And it's the idea that the people with real concerns are often the ones staying quiet, while the louder voices are usually just pushing their own agenda. And that really resonates. So, can you share more about why that happens and how a project leader can create space for those quieter but probably more thoughtful perspectives and bring them to the surface?
Yeah, I mean, not everyone who's loud is a bad actor, but most bad actors just happen to be loud. And so when
Okay.
you're listening, to be fair, right? And so what that means is that if you only listen to those loudest voices, sure, you're going to get a bunch of people who are really confident, but you generally aren't going to get a lot of expertise. Project work means nuance, and nuance is quiet. Nuance is never loud. So
Uh
you
huh.
have to listen for the people who are your stakeholders, but they're holding back, not the one dominating. And if somebody's quiet, but their job is deeply involved with your project, right? If you're doing a supply chain project and your planner is really, really quiet, right? Or your logistics person is really, really quiet, you have to pull them in because it's not just about facts, it's about establishing trust with all of your stakeholders. And
Got it.
if there's a detail that they are holding back for whatever reason, that needs to land with equal weight to the loud people, right? And it can't just be the volume of ideas; it has to be the quality of ideas, and that complexity and that nuance, like I said, is often quiet. And by giving it the full value that some of your bigger ideas have,
Uh huh.
you can identify where all those risks live because the devil is in the details. And those details, again, require some digging to get out of people, especially people who are experts, because, expertise is often quiet because it is full of doubt, and ignorance is often loud because it doesn't have any doubt.
Hmm. Very philosophical.
I don't know about that.
So, we've talked about structure and facts, but one of the things that we may not have said expressly is the role of curiosity. So, you're not just managing the process, you're asking, why does this person see it that way? Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, first and foremost, curiosity disarms people. Most folks kind of go into a battle mode when they're going into a disagreement or even when they're just showing up for their project work that relates to their job. They are there to defend turf. They are there to protect their teammates. They are there to protect their KPIs and their bonus and their paycheck and all that stuff that goes with it. So, uh, curiosity invites them to leave their guard down. And also, it leads yourself to be ready to be wrong, right? When you're asking questions, you are, by the nature of the conversation, you are learning. And sometimes you learn stuff that, is a problem. Sometimes you learn stuff that makes you feel better about the project, but it is always helping you surface the truth without judgment, right? There will be time for judgment
Mm-hmm.
later once you get the ideas. Like I said, either we're going to agree or someone's going to decide, but
Mm-hmm.
you really need to steel yourself to not judge at the point of collection. And so I think that being open to learning and questioning rather than telling, especially in the beginning and midpoints of the project, uh, that's strategic, right? It's not just woo woo hand holding. It is actually being
Right.
strategic about how you spend your time.
Yeah. I love that. Always learning, right? Just open to being wrong. That because that's possible. So,
you,
there's probably
it's all the time, right? You the people you're working with have the expertise, not you, and you got to remember that.
absolutely. So, there's probably someone who's in the middle of a disagreement right now on a project and staying quiet because they don't want to stir things up. What would you say to that person?
Oh gosh, if you care about the outcome, you've got to speak up, right? You really have to own the escalation of your issues, because other people won't do it for you. You're not going to always have, a blue skies guy or someone else who is making sure every voice is heard at the table, and you can't wait for someone just to call on you and ask you for your 2 cents. So, get your voice out there, use facts, stay respectful, but be direct, because quiet doesn't solve tension. It just delays the fallout, right? There will be an impact for you being quiet, and it will probably be a lot later than you wanted it to be.
Yeah. These are all my new JP quotable quotes. Quiet doesn't solve tension. It just delays the fallout. I love it. JP, this has been just a really insightful and relatable discussion. So thank you so much for bringing all of this clarity and real world experience to the table. If our Frontline Insights listeners could take one thing away from today, what would it be?
Oh gosh, don't avoid tension. Don't overreact to it either and blow it up in a thing. But get in there, stay curious, be structured in your approach, and when in doubt, just get all the facts before you make a decision.
Awesome. Thanks again for taking the time to join us on the podcast today. It's always a pleasure talking to you, JP.
This is fun.
And that wraps up another episode of Frontline Insights. Until next time, keep listening between the lines and leading with clarity.